I'm standing here in the Mavericks tunnel. Over there is the Celtics tunnel. That's where the winners are. If Luka's ever going to be a winner coming out of this tunnel here, he is going to have to use what's happened in this finals as a learning experience. His defensive performance is unacceptable. He is a hole on the court. The Celtics are attacking him. They are ahead in this series because they have attacked him defensively.
All right, so Brian Windhorst had that to say about Luka Doncic after what was a very disappointing game 3 for the Mavericks. Obviously, they are down 0-3 in the series. Gonna be honest with y'all, and I think most of y'all can agree, it's very tough envisioning this Mavericks team pulling off 4 straight wins to make NBA history and winning this series. Now, do I want to see it? Absolutely. I want to see as close of a series as possible. I want to see NBA history happen, but the way Boston is playing, it's going to be very tough to see that happening. Even if Dallas does win game 4 and force it to 5, you're going back to Boston in an elimination game where they're up 3-1. I just don't see that situation playing in their favor. So about Brian Windhorst and his take, I agree, right? It is very, very tough for you to win. I'm going to kind of focus on Luka's defense here. It's very tough for you to win when your best player is this much of a liability from a defensive standpoint. Very, very tough, right? We knew coming into the series, Boston, with their style of play, they were going to do everything in their power to try to get Luka on the ball, guarding Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And out of that, so much of their offense was able to open up, right? I thought they did a good job this series of attacking that matchup. And from there, they were able to get really good looks around the rim, or they were able to kick it out and find shooters. Last night, game 3, they got up 46 3-point attempts. So they've gotten off so many good looks, and a lot of them have come out of them attacking Luka when he's stuck guarding out there on the ball. This isn't like Rudy Gobert with the Wolves, where you have the luxury to bench a guy if he's a liability on defense and still stay competent enough offensively. Luka is such a vital part to this Mavericks offense. It's very tough to take him off the floor and expect the Mavericks to continue to stay in rhythm on offense, since he is the driver behind this offense, right? He is the guy that's used the most on this offense. I don't know what usage rates are right now. I would argue that he's got one of the 3 highest usage rates in the NBA when like accounting for all teams, right? This team runs an unhealthy amount of offense strictly through him. It has been that way pretty much since his second season in the league. So Dallas doesn't have this luxury where they can kind of take him off the floor and expect to still be good enough offensively, because he carries so much of a load on that end. So they kind of had to suck it up and keep him out there when he was struggling so much from a defensive standpoint, right? And so that brings us to like the biggest thing for Luka right now is going into next season. He's got to figure that part of the game out. I think physically he's good enough to be a solid defender, but there are 2 major things that make a good enough defensive player in this game. For one, yes, there are the physical tools, but more importantly, there's the IQ and there's the effort. And Luka just didn't bring it on any of those 2 fronts at all, right? We're talking about IQ. He was ball washing a lot of times, did not do a good job of keeping home to his assignment, and they gave up buckets out of there. And the effort, just not doing a good enough job at fighting through screens, even with these off-ball screens. He was getting caught so much in those situations and giving things up. He didn't bring it from an IQ and effort standpoint. Those are 2 pretty big intangibles. Those are going to be important for him as he continues to try to level up his game. If you were a superstar level player or an all-star level player who's like on the borderline of being a superstar, you have to be solid enough from a 2-way standpoint. I'm not asking Luka to be like a Drew Holiday, not asking him to be like a Derek White, not asking him to be like a Marcus Smart or like a Scottie Pippen, not asking him to be like this super high level defensive player of the year, point of attack defender type of guy. As a matter of fact, we kind of saw in the Western Conference Finals, it's not the best idea to have your best offensive guy taking tough defensive assignments for the entire 48 minutes, right? We saw Ant try to guard Kyrie Irving in that game 1 against the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Mavericks, and he was just completely gassed by the 4th quarter. So we know coaches want to try to preserve their best players as much as they can. But at the same time, you still have to be solid enough to where you're not a liability, to where you're not seen as someone that the offense can hunt, right? That's not where Luka's at right now. He was food to Boston, right? They consistently went at him whenever like Tatum would have the ball. Top priority was whoever Luka's guarding, bring his man over, get that guard-to-guard screen action going, and get Luka on the ball. They hunted him so much. That cannot be the case moving forward. Luka cannot be a liability to the point to where teams think he is such a mismatch. They know whenever they get him on the ball, they're going to get whatever they want. That cannot be the case. He has to add that aspect to his game. Again, he can work on himself physically, but I think he's got solid enough physical tools given how big he is out there on the perimeter. A lot of it comes down to IQ and effort. Those are intangibles. He has to bring those things to the table big time, right? We've seen a lot of great offensive-minded players hit this wall because they're just good from an offensive standpoint, but they never brought it consistently from a defensive standpoint. Carmelo Anthony is one name to kind of list off there. James Harden is another name to list off there. Those weren't like the number one reasons why they didn't win championships, but those were big enough driving factors behind that. I don't want Luka to fall into that territory. And generally speaking, he's trending upward from a defensive standpoint. If you look at him this postseason, this has been the best defense he's played in his entire career. But in watching the finals and seeing how much Boston saw the incentive of hunting him on the offensive end, we know that he's not there just yet as a reliable defender. So when people criticize his defense, they're not saying he needs to be like defensive player of the year level, all defense level. That'd be nice. That'd be dope as hell if Luka could get there, but that's not what's going to happen. But he at least has to be solid enough. Stephen Curry is not a lockdown defender, but he brings effort and IQ, solid awareness, and that's what's made him a really solid team defender, and that's what's allowed him to exist well within that Golden State defense over the last couple of seasons. So that's something Luka just has to add into his game. I think another thing to talk about too with Luka is the offense. I didn't think he did a good job, especially in game 3, of keeping that Mavericks offense in rhythm. And it's not just because he wasn't shooting it efficiently, but it's even some of the things he's doing with his decision-making. So there was like a part of the game, I think like in the first half, Kyrie had it going. He had a couple of really difficult three-point shots consecutively or like a couple of possessions down. He clearly has the hot hand. Dallas comes back down that third possession. I'm thinking, get the ball to the hot hand, go to what's working at that time. Kyrie Irving is good enough to where if he's hot, you could run the offense through him. Luka doesn't even look his way and goes and gets his own shot, which was not a very good shot. So in saying that, Luka sometimes, and I noticed this really throughout the regular season, when Kyrie's got it going, they wouldn't really defer to him as much as I think they should. If Kyrie's got the hot hand, I'm going to continue to try to feed Kyrie. Kyrie has more than enough experience. He's got a championship, more than enough game to continuously get the ball in his hands and make plays if he's hot. Kyrie is that guy. He's one of the most lethal offensive players the game has ever seen. Sometimes when Kyrie has it going, Luka will disrupt that flow and disrupt that rhythm, and they'll kind of lose that momentum. It's not something that happens every time, but it happens a little bit too much. As a point guard, as like the main facilitator on that team, it is your job to make sure your guys are in the best positions to succeed. We know he can score, but if someone else has it going, like a Kyrie, your main prerogative is let's keep finding Kyrie, keep getting him to a position of success to where he can operate and do his thing. I don't think he did a good enough job at that. I don't think so, right? There are a lot of times where I'm like, they should run this through Kyrie, and they just choose not to do it. I don't know if that's Jason Kidd making that decision. I don't know if that's Luka making that decision single-handedly, but he needs to do a better job at reading scenarios. He'll disrupt the rhythm and the flow of the game by ignoring the guy who's got the hot hand. That happens a lot. I know it sounds really simplistic, but it's something that over the course of the season, in the playoffs at times, in this series in particular, especially in game 3, that I've noticed a bit. And also, it's just too heliocentric, right? We know Luka can score a lot. We know he can be 30 points, 9 assists, and 9 rebounds a game. We know he can do those things. But they've been running like this heliocentric style of basketball since his second year. Your question is this the best way to optimize Luka to where he can actually lead a team to win titles, right? Is there a better way for us to utilize Luka instead of having him be the ball handler the entire possession, take a million dribbles until he finds like this really difficult shot that he may or may not make? Is there a better way for us to optimize Luka? For example, Giannis. There had to be differences in how teams decided to use Giannis within their offense. And once they found that difference, they won a championship in 2021. We've seen it happen many different times. Miami Heat, 2012, 2013, they found different ways to utilize LeBron James, putting him into different positions, different situations to succeed. Same with Luka. There has to be a different way that Luka can be effective outside of this ISO heavy thing. Luka, I know for a fact, Luka can be effective on the court without having to have the ball in isolation for 65, 70% of the game. There has to be another way. So I think they have to figure that part out. It could be coaching. I think a lot of that falls on Jason Kidd, but there has to be another way to truly optimize Luka Doncic. There has to be another way. So that's something they need to figure out. But like I said, he has those two things to really figure out, especially with the defense. But at the same time, he's young, right? He's just 25 years old. He's already been to the West Finals twice. He's a West Finals champion. He's been to the NBA Finals, obviously, with this season. So he has a lot of time to figure it out, right? And I'm glad he had this moment in the finals because it's a gut check for him. A lot of superstar players, a lot of Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers had those moments in their careers where their first finals appearance was like a wake-up call. 2007, LeBron realized, okay, I need to work on this part of my game. Even 2011, he was at that point in his career. 2012, Kevin Durant, he was at that point in his career. He got to his first finals appearance. Okay, I probably need to add these things to my game. Let's think about some other guys. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, 2022. They get to the finals. They realize, okay, these are things that we have to get better at. We can't run this style of play and expect to win championships. And look at them now. They're about to win, or it looks like they're about to win their first championship. That's where Luka is right now. So I don't think we should overreact to this. Yes, it's disappointing as hell. And yes, it was a horrific performance last night defensively. One of the worst we've seen from any superstar in NBA history or any borderline superstar in NBA history. But he has time to get these things right. He does. So we'll see what ends up happening. We'll see what Dallas does come game 4. I want them to extend this series as much as possible. I really do. But unless they figure something out defensively, starting with him, they've got zero chance. And that's not just for this year, but over the next couple of years. If Luka does not add to his game from a defensive perspective, even find a better way to optimize himself on offense, this Maverick squad is going to be kind of stuck in trying to get over the hump mode over the next couple of years.